that province today presented its fiscal update, revealing the dramatic toll COVID-19 has had on the economy. It projects that the deficit will be $24.2 billion this year. That's the biggest deficit in Alberta's history and $16.8 billion more than had originally been projected back in February. Alberta's revenue is, of course, heavily dependent on natural resource royalties, and with oil prices plummeting earlier this year and only a modest bounce back this summer, those resource revenues are projected to be $3.7 billion lower than originally budgeted. So how does the province plan to address this bleak economic picture? We have reached Finance Minister Travis Toews in Edmonton to answer that question. Hi, Minister Toews. Good to see you. Thank you for making time for us.
Well, it's a pleasure to be on your show.
Minister, that deficit figure, $24 billion, revenues across multiple categories are down. Why did your government today not present any kind of plan to tackle that fiscal hole?
Well, listen, firstly, right now there is continued uncertainty, which, again, factors into our plans going forward. But we have rolled out a plan. There's no doubt that economic recovery is going to need to be a very significant part of our fiscal recovery. And so back in late June, the Premier and I announced an economic recovery plan. We will not deal with our great fiscal challenge unless we can grow our economy and see our economy recover. That's job number one. So we've rolled out a plan in the interim. We've also really rolled out a plan back in Budget 2019 and Budget 2020, and that is to ensure that we're delivering government services in the most efficient way. That will continue. There's more work to do there. So we do have a plan. We'll be rolling out and presenting a 3-year fiscal update in November, and of course, a budget in February of 2021. So that will provide, again, a 3-year plan going forward. We would intend to identify a new point at which we'll be able to balance the budget, because as you would expect, our plan to balance the budget in 22-23 will be necessarily delayed.
Let me ask you first, I have questions about the efficiencies, but on the economic recovery and the role that your government anticipates that will play in a recovery, or an overall recovery, rather. Economic growth, is it not as uncertain right now as anything else, any other factor that you're dealing with? I know that your government has taken certain measures, but in the context of the pandemic, where we know from many economists right across the country, it's not going to be, a perfect V. How do you rely so heavily on growth as what will motivate the recovery?
Well, listen, we have to manage what we're able to manage. We have, I believe we have the responsibility to ensure that we are putting in place every ingredient to have the most competitive business environment here in the province possible, to disproportionately attract investment into the province, create job opportunities, fiscal capacity that will eventually provide result in greater government revenues. I believe that's an essential part of the path forward. So, of course, again, when we took office last summer, the summer of 2019, we started immediately working to bring in policies and implementing measures that would improve the business environment, competitiveness of the business environment in the province. We're going to continue to ensure that job creators in this province, that investment proponents will find a home here in Alberta and be able to grow and expand and create opportunity. And I really believe that it's incumbent on every level of government, including our federal government at this point, to ensure that we're implementing policies that will improve our productivity and competitiveness, that will attract global investment into the nation. We really need to focus on economic growth coming as we begin to recover from this pandemic economic collapse.
I guess what I wonder is, is your government putting too many of its eggs in one basket, right? I mean, you talk about some of the measures you took in 2019. I look at an RBC report from September of 2019 that had started to downgrade already the projections for economic growth in Alberta. Your government can do some stuff, but there's also a lot of other things like the price of oil that impact that economic growth. Do you have to look outside just economic growth as a motivator or as a determinant factor for economic recovery?
Well, again, effectively, we need to focus on managing the variables that we can manage. We need to put in place every policy to encourage economic growth, attract investment. We also need to ensure that we are delivering the most efficient government. Those are two things we can do as a government right now, and we're doubling down on those two priorities.
When you talk about efficiencies, the opposition is concerned and expresses the concern often. I know you'll know better than I even, that means cuts, major cuts to programs. And when you see a deficit this size, $24 billion, I think the average Albertan will wonder, well, how many efficiencies can you cut to make up $24 billion? Is your government going to cut program spending?
Well, again, here's the reality. Number one priority is economic growth. It's growing the economy. We need to expand our fiscal capacity. That's number one. If you take a look at what's happened in terms of the factors that have created this $24 billion deficit, the vast majority of that was revenue destruction, again, due to a challenged economy. Job number one, creating an environment where we can see economic growth and recovery. But listen, we absolutely need to continue to ensure that we're working to deliver the most efficient government possible. As you know, the McKinnon panel report pointed out a little over a year ago, that Alberta is an outlier in terms of the cost of delivering services to Albertans. And so, again, Budget 2019, Budget 2020 started down the direction of delivering services more efficiently. We need to continue down that road. We need to look at every opportunity to deliver more efficiently. We can no longer afford to be an outlier, certainly not in this fiscal environment.
My question, though, is around what efficiency means. And you know this is a live political conversation for many years in Alberta. I'll point to some analysis from Trevor Toome from the University of Calgary, who says, look, okay, efficiencies make sense, and it looks like you're going to, you talk about being an outlier, but you'll be more in line with other provinces in a few more years. That's still not going to make up $24 billion. Do you have to? And I know that the McKinnon report didn't examine it, and I know that you have so far, rejected the idea that you have to look at the revenue side of things. But do you now see, facing the size of the problem that you face, that you might have to look at that side of things?
Vashi, there's a sequencing here. Again, there's not a chance that we can cut our way out of a $24 billion deficit. Fully agreed. That's why, again, job number one is growing the economy, ensuring the variables are in place so that we can attract investment, grow the economy, grow our fiscal capacity. Job number two is to ensure that we are delivering efficiently on behalf of Albertans, respecting Alberta taxpayers' dollars. And the third reality is, down the road, we do need to have a discussion around revenue structure, around income tax structure. We need to ensure that we have the most efficient, appropriate tax structure possible. And in fact, in our platform, we laid that out, that later on in our mandate, we would strike a panel and we would consider our revenue structure in the province. I believe that will be an important process. But right now, to talk about raising taxes or introducing new taxes at a time of great economic challenge for Albertans and Alberta businesses would be very, very poor timing.
Yeah, no, and I take that point completely. I mean, the federal Liberals have said the same thing. I guess I wonder, after that point, after this sort of most acute part of this pandemic, when you're still facing a deficit the size of the one that you are now, or even one just a bit smaller, if you're open to that revenue discussion, because certainly it hasn't appeared that your government is before.
Well, we actually had included in our platform that later on in the mandate we would take a look at our revenue structure, the efficiency of our tax system. I think that's an important review under any circumstances from time to time. It will certainly be important going forward.
Okay, Minister, I'm going to leave it there. I appreciate your time this evening, as always. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Travis Toews is Alberta's finance minister.